Hey guys, welcome back to the Hangar. In this episode, we are going to work on hanging some concrete backer board and doing all the waterproofing for the guest shower. This project has kind of been ongoing over the past several months, so some of this stuff will be in the past if you've been following the video series. So, for instance, I started hanging the backer board before the concrete floors were even finished. And you'll also notice that there's not a toilet installed when I started hanging the backer board. So some of this is kind of out of order, but I wanted this video to be the whole project. So this video will cover everything from hanging the backer board and then doing the whole waterproofing and preparing that shower for tile. So let's not waste any time and let's get to it. So we are going to start here in the guest bedroom. I can't install the toilet, which is what I really would like to do first, because we're still not done with the floors. So because I can't jump to the toilet until the floors are done, I'm going to try and get backer board hung up in this guest shower. That'll help cover up the insulation so there's no exposed insulation. And then that way when we move in with the cats won't want to come play in here and mess around with the insulation, and we can then begin using the bathtub as a bathtub until I start doing tile work. So the first start of this shower is going to be hanging backer board. This is something I'm not an expert at. I haven't done this before. If I have, it's been many years back when I was a child. So I'm going to try and jump on backer board now, and let's kind of see how it turns out. Okay, so I taped off the inside of the tub to protect it. I used my straight edge to verify that all my studs are nice and flat, all in a plane on this back wall. And I'm ready to put up my first sheet of backer board. You can see I got some paint sticks here that I'm going to use to shim the backer board just about 1/8 of an inch or so off of the tub face. And what my plan will be is I'll do that all the way around. And then after all this, the backer board is up, I'll go back in and I'll silicone that little gap underneath the backer board to give it room to kind of expand and contract and move with the walls a little bit. And then my tile will just go all the way straight down to that. The tile I'll also space out from the top face of the tub, but I'll fill that gap with grout after the tile's in place. So let's get on to it. Let's try and hang some backer board on this back wall. Well, okay, my studs all lined up on my straight edge before I hung the backer board, but when I actually got it on the wall, these end pieces didn't want to sit exactly flush. So you can see over here on this other side how it is. See if I can show you. It's got quite a bit of flex. So what I did is I went with my table saw and I ripped these 1/8 inch kind of shims out of a scrap piece of 2x4, and I'm sliding these back here. And what I'm doing now is I'm going through and on these edges to make sure I don't split this or split these ends. I'm pre-drilling holes before I am sinking the backer board screws. So I may have to do that all the way up on this back wall, shim these end 2 studs out, but these middle 3 all lined up nicely, with these being out a little far, so it's really not that big a deal to fix. So on this shower niche, I want it marked so that this face is in front of the boards that are on the sides and the top. But I want the board that's on the bottom of the shower niche to come over the top of this board. So I've marked this one 1/2 inch inside of this, stud that I've shimmed that shower niche inside. And this one as well, I've marked 1/2 inch inside. But down here I measured, and this should be flush with that board. So I'm going to try and cut this stuff out with a jigsaw actually, and hopefully my lines are good. Now note, I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to wear a respirator because this stuff makes fairly bad for you dust when you cut it up. It's got that glass mesh inside. It also has a lot of silica sand or small silicates in the backer board. So I'm going to put a respirator on before I start cutting this stuff off. So now that all the cement backer board has been hung, the next step is to go through and try and waterproof all the corners and the seams. So I'm going to have essentially seams between all of the pieces of backer board, big long seams down these corners, and then I'm going to have 4 outside corners here on this outside of the niche and 4 inside corners on the inside of the niche. So we are going to try and waterproof those with some waterproofing membrane waterproofing strip. Well, okay, so I got these kind of pre-cut, pre-shaped inside quarter Schluter-Curdy felt waterproofing things, and I'm going to try and install these. I've never done this before. So I've mixed myself up a real small batch of thinset because I'm not real experienced doing this, so I'm probably going to work in small batches until I get a little bit better. But I'm going to go ahead and attempt to install probably this back left corner as somewhere just to start. So it seems like you just get you some thinset and you smear it on all 3 faces of that corner. You're going to make sure that you have plenty of overlap. Okay, that looks pretty decent to me. Now I got one of these kind of real small trowels. I'm going to use the 1/8 inch by 1/4 inch kind of side of this trowel and get some notches, get rid of all the excess thinset. I'm going to try just using my flat trowel, flat knife here, to embed that into that thinset. Okay, so I discovered a couple things here. I didn't go far enough out on my thinset, so let's try and add a little bit more. Now we want to try and scrape our knife clean. And just embed that into that corner. So I decided to work on waterproofing the shower niche from the inside out. There's not really any rocket science to that. If you were to do it the other way, if you worked on the outside first, when you moved to the inside, you'd be rubbing your forearms in all the thinset that you'd set on the outside. It was actually a lot easier than I anticipated it being. It was fairly simple to shove that stuff into the thinset, use 2 knives to kind of, hold it in place with one knife and then spread it out with the other. And it actually worked pretty good. Okay, now that all 4 of the inside corners are done, I'm moving on to the outside corners. And once again, it's the same process. You just make sure that you cover all 4 faces surrounded by that felt corner, scrape off the excess, and then kind of embed that pre-molded corner into the thinset. So here's what it looks like with all 8 of the corner pieces on. So I got all 4 of the inside corners and all 4 of the outside corners thinsetted on. I'm going to let that set up until it gets hard before I continue onward. That way I don't have to worry about pulling the corner pieces out of the corners when I start going through and do the edge seams. So the next step will be to do the 4 inside seams and the 4 outside seams around the niche. And after I'm good with all that, we'll go through and we'll start doing the seams in between the sheets and the corners up and down. But I'm going to let that set up and firm up so that they are good and in place so I don't pull them apart or mess them up when I'm doing the next seams. I am using the same brand Schluter-Curdy felt seam tape here to go ahead and waterproof all the seams. It's a fairly straightforward process. Just go ahead and smear you some thinset on the corner and then embed the tape into it. Anywhere where you have two pieces of tape intersect, you always want at least 2 inches of overlap. So you'll see that happening here when I put the thinset on these flat seams and smear it all the way up to the corners, so the corner pieces will have good overlap. Once I had all the flat seams done, I went ahead and filled all of these screw holes with thinset, and that way I don't have any penetrations through the backer board that are exposed. The corners are a little bit harder, but same sort of process. You go ahead and smear your thinset. Once you cut your strip to length, go ahead and pre-crease it. It makes it a lot easier to smash it into the thinset and get a good bond. Okay, so all of these seams and corners and screw holes have been taped off or sealed with thinset. I almost am ready to start applying the liquid waterproofing membrane. The last piece of the puzzle is I have 2 of these kind of seal rings here that will go one over the faucet and one over the shower head, but I'm still waiting on the faucet to arrive in the mail. So once the faucet gets in, I will install those. I've looked into it. You'd actually do a little bit of different waterproofing around the valve handles that come out. But once I get those installed, I'll be ready to start painting on the waterproofing membrane, and that will mean the shower is ready for tile. So once the shower arm arrived in the mail, I was able to install the kind of seal ring around it. I also verified that the nipple that I have there will work. It's the right length for the tub spout that I ordered, so I went ahead and sealed that around. These go on essentially the same way. You just put thinset behind them and then embed them nice and flat into the thinset. So now that all the seams and corners have been taped and thinsetted up, we are ready to apply our waterproofing membrane. So for a waterproofing membrane, I'm going with this Red Guard. It's just one of the products out there that you can do. And it says for general waterproofing to apply 2 coats. So it is a liquid waterproofing membrane that I will just roll on with a paint roller. And it says to do 2 coats. We'll do 1 coat going up and down, and then we'll do the next coat going left and right. But there's really not much more to it than that. So let's paint it on and see how it turns out. So this is the first time I've ever used this product, and the first thing that kind of surprised me was that it is very thick. It's like the consistency of chocolate pudding, so a little bit thicker than I was used to working with. And the first coat where you're applying it directly to the backer board, it was pretty hard to get it to spread nice and evenly. Okay, so there is the first coat on and dry. Let's get to the second coat. You'll also notice that I started wearing a respirator while I was applying the first coat. I don't know what this stuff is made out of, if it's solvent-based or water-based or what, but it definitely off-gasses some nasty smelling stuff. Well, okay, so here is the second coat down. The second coat went a lot easier than the first one. It seemed like it tracked on or rolled on a lot smoother. I was able to fill in a lot of kind of the porous parts of the concrete backer board and look like it got a good uniform coating everywhere. So we are going to let this dry. After this dries, I'll probably go back with a brush and just spot touch up everywhere that has kind of light spots or anything to it. Well, I didn't want to put any of the stuff that I'd scooped out in the pan back in the bucket. So you probably saw there at the end, I used whatever excess I had in the pan, and I went especially thick in all the areas that I thought were going to get wet. So especially kind of down low below the shower head, everything from kind of here down gets a lot more wet than the stuff that's up high. So that's not as critical as all the rest of the walls. So I went extra thick kind of in this region on the shower for that second coat. So here it is after it has all dried and set up, kind of turned a nice dark red. So what I'm going to do right now is there's a couple places that you'll see, like right here where there's some trash that got caught underneath some of the red guard. Kind of some nibs that stick up here that may interfere with getting tile down. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of scrape all of those off with an old razor blade here. Get them smooth, touch up the places where I scraped them off. You can see I scraped one off right here, so I'll touch up that. Once that's all done, I'm gonna put some light coats on a couple places where it looks a little light still. You can see the concrete backer board was really porous here, and I didn't get that red guard all the way into all those pores. So I'm gonna try and get a little bit more in some of the spots where it looks a little light. And then once all that's done, I'm gonna pull this piece of plywood off the bathtub, pull all the tape off, and I'm gonna silicone that seam around the outside. I may also come back and silicone this seam here, which you won't see. That'll get hidden behind trim. I'm gonna have trim that butts up against this, and then the tile will butt up against the trim. But I may go through and silicone this seam as well, just in case any water gets behind that tile, it won't get beside that drywall. So I apologize for the leaning camera. I have a really cheap tripod, and its feet are starting to give out, so the whole tripod starts to lean real bad. But I started out by adding an extra coat in the shower niche where all the corners and edges are. That's where you're most likely to see leaks. And then instead of going through and adding, you know, just touching up light spots, I decided just to give it a whole nother coat. After that, I cleaned it up and I started pulling the tape back that was underneath the cement backer board so that I could go through and put a nice clean bead of silicone between the backer board and the tub. Finally, I went in and I added a bead of silicone along the drywall seams with the backer board. So here is what it looks like all done. You can see that there's a couple spots there in the niche where the red guard's on a little thick, where it's still pink and hasn't quite set up yet. But I went ahead and just put a whole nother coat on. It ended up being easier than just trying to go through and touch things up. I decided just to put a whole third coat on and make it extra thick in the shower. I did go through and I siliconed that seam between the backer board and the tub all the way around. Forgive me if it's not perfect. I didn't go through and smooth it out exactly with my finger. Remember that tile is going to come all the way down and sit on this face. So all of this silicone will be behind that tile. I say that the tile will be spaced off just a gap. So there will be just a little bit of grout underneath the tile. But all of this will be hidden. You won't see any of it. And I went ahead and I siliconed these seams on the side as well. And that is also all going to be hidden. So if it doesn't look perfect, don't worry about it. Once again, trim is going to butt up to the backer board here, and then tile will butt up to the trim. So all of that will be behind the trim and the tile. So with the silicone down on both sides, also put it over here on this side, and that third coat of red guard on, this shower is officially ready for tile. Well, alright guys, that is going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching me prepare this whole shower that you see behind me for tile. I am going to tile it in another video. I have not done a whole lot of tile work, so I am not an expert, and I think that tiling it is going to be pretty tough and probably a personal growing experience for me. So I am going to end this video right here, and in the next upcoming videos, hopefully we'll be jumping on tile in the shower. So stay tuned and I'll catch you on the next one.